All right, so when we are conjugating a verb, we've got three different kinds of verbs that we talked about yesterday, right? There's AR verbs, ER verbs, and IR verbs. And that's all there is. There's no other kinds. Of course, there are irregular verbs, but for the most part, they're all AR, ER, and IR. So first, let's talk about the verb endings. What are the AR verb endings? O, as, a, amos, and an. Good. And we don't use that vosotros, right? So give me some examples of AR verbs. Those are verbs that end in AR. What are some? Hablar. Good. That's our standby. Estudiar. What else, amigos? Escuchar. Enseñar. Mirar. Very good, and we'll leave it at that. Now, let's talk about the ER verb endings. Once again, we are looking at O, and then what? Es, and then E, and then hemos, and finally en. Very good. So it's exactly the same as those AR, except wherever there was an A, there's now an E. What are some examples of ER verbs? Well, we learned some new ones yesterday. Leer, right? What does leer mean? To read. What else? Tener. Tener I'm going to leave off the list only because it's irregular. Comer. What does comer mean? To eat. Beber, which means to drink. Are there any others that we learned yesterday? Or were they all mostly IR verbs? Okay. So finally, we talked yesterday about IR verbs. So what are the endings? Remind me, they're almost exactly the same as ER verbs, except the we form. So it would be O, ES, E, help me out here, emos, with an I. That's the only time it's different. And then finally, EN. Good. And now yesterday was the day that we really covered a lot of those IR verbs. What were they? Abrir. What does abrir mean? To open. How about what you're doing right now? Escribir. Good. Anything else? Okay. How about vivir? What does vivir mean? To live. Good. So all we do when we conjugate is we substitute these endings with the other endings to talk about who's doing it. All right. We feel pretty strong about that, right? So yesterday, what we added is talking about what we are going to do. And when we talk about what we're going to do, there's a formula. What is it? Ir plus a plus infinitive verb. Great. Now, ir by itself, the verb means what? To go. So if we conjugate ir, what does it look like? Voy, vas, va, vamos, and van. So when you use one of those paired with an infinitive verb, it tells me what somebody is going to do. Anyone want to give me an example? Ryan.
Ramon va a ir al baño.
Va a ir al baño. Can you tell me what that means?
Oh, he's going to go to the bathroom.
Ramon is going to go to the bathroom. That's exciting.
Oh, I forgot about the al bit.
Yeah, when a and el get together, they become al. All right, now, yesterday we also added how to talk about what we have to do. Now, what's the verb for to have? Tener. Good. But tener isn't followed with a, it's followed with que. And then finally, what's the last part of that formula? Infinitive verb. All right. So the only one that you conjugate is tener. Who remembers how to conjugate tener? All right, take it away, Chris. Tango. Tienes. I really have to squeeze here. Tiene. Tenemos. And tienen. Who can give me an example of telling me what someone has to do? Ryan again.
Let's see.
I'm guessing it's Ramon.
Ramon tiene que ir por el perro. Ir a por el perro.
Okay, I think what you're saying is that Ramon has to take a walk. But so it should be ir a pie, and you say ir a perro. He has to go to the dog, or he has to go for a walk. Tiene que ir a pie. In the last chapter, we learned that ir a pie means to go on your feet or to walk. So what Ryan told us is Ramon has to walk. Great example. Well, he said
It could be
it's
su perro.
oh, su perro también. That's fine. Okay, so we learned that yesterday. How do we feel about that? Pretty good? Okay, más o menos. The very last part is to talk about what we just did. What we just did, okay? So it's a formula too. So what we don't know are the first two, but what do you think that third part of the formula is? It is going to be an infinitive verb. So it's just figuring out those first two. The first one is acabar. Can everybody say acabar? Acabar. And it's not followed with a, and it's not followed with que. This one is followed with de. All right, so all we have to do is conjugate what verb? Acabar. Now, acabar is what kind of a verb? Is it AR, ER, or IR? It is AR. Can we conjugate an AR verb? All right, so how do you put it in the O form? It'd be acabó, to form. Acabas, he or she form. Acaba, we form. Acabamos, and they form would be acaban. Good. So now, help me to create a sentence that says in Spanish, Ramon just, help me out here. He just read Animal Farm, since you guys love that book so much.
What is acabar?
Ramon just read Animal Farm. Acabar by itself means to have just. All right. So Ramon, which form is the he form and would match with Ramon? Acaba. And acaba is followed with de. Then how do we say to read? Leer. Animal Farm. So who can tell me what my sentence says? Ramon acaba de leer Animal Farm. Ramon just read Animal Farm. Awesome. Let's do some examples together.